Hello, today I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple Bakewell Tart. It's a classic English dessert and one of my personal favourites. As with all my how-to videos, if you want to see a stage of the process again, there'll be a rewind button here if you have annotations turned on. Okay, let's have a look at the ingredients. Okay, so first of all, I have actually cheated. I've gone and got some sweet pastry ready-made. You can of course make your own, and I'm sure there's plenty of decent pastry recipes on YouTube. I have got 150 grams, about 5 ounces of unsalted butter. I've got the same quantity, 150 grams or 5 ounces of caster sugar. Same quantity again. This is ground almonds, so 150 grams, 5 ounces of ground almonds. And a small amount, maybe about 50 grams, 2 ounces of plain flour, some almond extract, some seedless raspberry jam, you can choose whatever jam you want, 3 eggs, and then finally for the decoration at the finish, I've got about 80 grams, 3 ounces of icing sugar. I've also preheated the oven to gas mark 6, which is about 200 degrees Celsius or about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. It may be slightly less if you're using a fan oven. Okay, so first of all, we're going to put the pastry into a flan-tin. Okay, I'm just going to lay it on the flan-tin. Okay, so you want to press it into the edges. Careful not to break it. Okay, so use your fingers, or you can use a piece of pastry to press it into the fluted edge. Okay, so when we're done with this, you can just trim off some of the excess here. We're going to blind bake this in the oven, so I'm going to get a sheet of baking paper. I'll just place it inside the tin. Trim down the edges. Okay, and then I've actually got some baking beans here. Now you can use other dried beans for instance, but I'm going to use these ceramic ones here. So spread these out. There we go. I'm going to pop that in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, so while that is baking, we can get on with making the Frangipane layer. Okay, so first of all, in a pan on a low heat, I'm going to add the butter. Okay, when it's melted, I'm going to take it off the heat. And then, first of all, we're going to add the sugar. Okay, so I'm going to stir that in. Then I'm going to add the ground almonds. Stir those in. Then I'm going to add one of the eggs. Okay, and then stir it in. Another egg. Okay, at this point I'm going to add half to 1 teaspoon of almond extract. Put that there. And stir that in. We're going to add the flour, just to thicken it up a little bit, so stir that in. And finally, 1 more egg. And there we have our lovely frangipane. Okay, and so now we've made the frangipane, it's about time to take the pastry out of the oven. Okay, so being careful because it'll be really hot, we're just going to take the baking beans out. Okay, we're going to put it back in the oven for a couple of minutes just to dry out the base. Okay, so after a couple of minutes we'll take it out, then we're going to turn the oven down to gas mark 4 or about 180 degrees Celsius, 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so the next job is to add a layer of jam to the base. Being careful because it's still quite hot. Okay, and then we're going to add the frangipane on top. Now be careful not to displace the jam, so we're going to put it on in small clumps, and it's quite liquidy at the moment, so it should spread out nicely to cover the whole tin. So make sure all the jam's covered. Now at this point you could put some flaked almonds on the top, but to be honest I prefer without. Okay. Okay, and then we're going to put it back in the oven for about 35 to 40 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 35 minutes. Okay, so we're going to leave it until it's completely cooled and then we can do some icing. Okay, so my Bakewell Tart is cooled now, so we'll go and prepare some icing sugar. Okay, so to my 80 grams or 3 ounces of icing sugar, I'm going to add 2.5 teaspoons of water. There's 1, 2, 1.5. Okay, I'm going to mix it in. Okay, Okay, so when we've mixed our icing or frosting, I'm going to spoon it into a piping bag. Okay, so our pie is cooled enough now. If you've got one of these tins, you just take it out the bottom there. And what we'll do is we'll snip the ends off the piping bag, and then just any sort of pattern will do. Okay, that will probably do actually. We'll let the icing sugar set. So here we have our completed Bakewell Tart. There we go. And of course now time for the most important bit. Where should we cut? Okay, so hopefully you should see there on the side. So we've got a pastry layer, and then a jam layer, and then the frangipane on the top. So, here goes.